have an interesting question that came up. It's Soapbox After Dark. I'm your host, Jamarl Thomas, the insomniac, the residential insomniac that's often at the helm at night. When real men can't sleep, real men sit here and real men do the news. One of the interesting points that came up was on an RT show, actually. What you see behind me is Estonia. This is the changing of the guards. I often like to watch these when I go into the various countries. It's a nice, way to pass the time. And as we're looking at it, Estonia looks like it's well manned and heavily defended. I'm pretty sure they will be okay against any incursion, foreign or domestic. But here's the catch. And having a conversation RT was having a conversation on the German pipeline. Essentially, there's a pipeline between Germany and Russia. And the United States, Donald Trump particularly, let's say Donald Trump, has been screaming and howling to anybody that would listen to him about the fact that this pipeline is going through. He doesn't like this pipeline. Now, the relationship between Germany and Russia go back a ways. So, it would be the United States is treading into territory that it doesn't necessarily have any say-so or should have any say-so over. These are sovereign countries making determinations that are in the best interest of those sovereign countries. And then, despite whatever assurances Angela Merkel gave to Donald Trump about this pipeline, it is apparently on schedule. Here's the catch. There's a small segment towards the end that's almost a throwaway that Jatris, I may be pronouncing his name a little bit off, I'm sorry, but Jatris says, and they just kind of move on. And I so disagree with him. Not with the climate that we're in now. Let me explain what I mean. I'm showing you Estonia for a reason. Listen to what Jatris says here. Like I said, they're talking about the pipeline. They're talking about these countries pulling closer to Russia. This is RT. All channels have somewhat of a bias for the home country that those channels are in. Depends on whether or not it's true and objective world. In this particular case, RT is kind of just making this point that, look, these countries are drawing closer to Russia despite the foreign policy of the United States and some of the other Western nations. But listen to what he says at the end that I want to talk about. And I'm going to leave this open for people to kind of comment below. I'm curious to hear other people's answers. But I'm going to give mine. And by the way, Jatris, anybody who I've ever said anything about on this show is more than welcome to come onto the show to make their point. I'm always open for the conversation. But let's hear him out. And let's hear what he says about little Estonia.
Opens up, we need you back. That opens up a whole new discussion on NATO. But let's talk about the president of Estonia.
Yeah.
Also paid a visit to President Putin in Moscow, and that follows Finland and Austria and other countries that are doing the same exact thing. Are we witnessing a trend here?
I think it's too soon to say. There certainly are some countries in Europe, Hungary, Austria, Slovakia, that would like to have a better relationship with Russia. A lot of people in Germany would like to see that. Poland, even though they're close to those countries on many things, are very, very anti-Russian. Right. And Estonia has generally taken a very anti-Russian policy, the other Baltic states as well. However, when the Estonian president went there, she was very correct, very restrained in her language. And so I think she would like to find some way to repair that relationship, but it's a very fine line for her to walk.
Well, she said that she went there to talk about the hard issues.
Yes.
What are the hard issues between Russia and Estonia?
Well, the hard issues, first off, have to do with Ukraine, have to do with NATO military pressure on Russia, and this kind of crying wolf we get from the Baltic states a lot. Oh, the Russians, you have to defend us against the Russians, even though if there ever were a war, God forbid, nobody is going to defend the Baltic states, and everybody knows this.
Yeah.
So I think this is maybe trying to inject some reality into the discussion.
Always.
I don't know why that's funny to me. It's so dismissive. If there's a war, let's stop kidding ourselves. Nobody's going to defend the Baltic states. Estonia is going to take a bullet. All right, so why is that mind-blowing, and why do I disagree with Jatris here? Jatris is a former U.S. diplomat, so he's been in the, this political thing for a while. And on top of being a former U.S. diplomat, he is now, he does this on RT. All right, the first point I want to kind of drill down to, where's Estonia? All right, I've never been to Estonia. I've been to Poland, and he's absolutely right about them being anti-Russian. Polish are very anti-Russian. That's something you learn. Don't say that you can't tell a similarity between a Polish and a Russian. You may get punched in the nose, even though it's sometimes hard listening to the language, at least from a foreigner's ear. But this is Estonia, right here, literal Estonia. Look at this. All of this is Russia. Can you imagine the German army trying to go through all of this territory? That's fucking amazing. But this is Estonia. Now you can see the military value of Estonia right off the bat. It's on the border of Russia. By the same token, you can see why it's detrimental. It's right on the border of Russia. The plus is simultaneously the minus. Also, just to make another point, Estonia didn't join NATO, I think it was till 2004. So this hasn't been a long relationship. This is somewhat of a Johnny-come-lately. But the point is, or the question is, would the other nations kick into gear if Estonia was attacked? Now, just so we're very clear also, the point of NATO's existence, the entire point was to be a bulwark against what was perceived as Soviet aggression. And as a bulwark, these nations could cobble together, and if one was attacked, all of them was attacked. Meaning if one was attacked, all of them would kick off. These nations wanted assurances that the United States would put its military might into gear in order to protect it. Going so far at one point is, if any nation is attacked, then the United States would immediately launch a nuclear strike. I don't think that that's where we are right now. Hopefully that's not where we are right now. But it begs the question, is it still true? Is it still indeed a pact? Now, pushing aside for the moment that the Soviet Union doesn't exist, and yet NATO still limbers on trying to find some excuse to legitimize its existence. But if Russia, say, Vladimir Putin, for whatever reason, says, I'm going to take Estonia, what are you going to do about it? Will the other nations immediately kick into gear? He's saying no. He's saying no, that these countries are not going to engage themselves in what may amount to a nuclear war on behalf of Estonia. I don't think they would jump into the conflict immediately with the notion that it's a nuclear war. I think these things are kind of like having an affair on your wife or on your husband or whoever. Oh, I'm just going to show up at this restaurant. Nothing is going to take place. Oh, I'm just going to go to the person's house. I haven't seen them in so long. Nothing is going to take place. Oh, my penis fell into her vagina. I have no idea how it happened. It was a complete mistake. It wasn't a mistake. It was one choice after the next that allowed you to edge your way into something that you wouldn't necessarily go headlong into right off the bat. It's almost like you allow excuses to propagate you along. Would they jump into a conflict with the thought that it would be a nuclear disaster right off the bat? No. Would they engage in a conflict? Yes. I don't believe it. So, two things that are taking place right now in the United States. We have an election coming up, and we have a president who one party has castigated as being a Russian agent. And despite the Mueller report coming out saying that, look, there's no collusion here, this guy's not a Russian agent, whatever you want to think about him, many of people are still digging that ditch, and they don't necessarily want to let that tune go. And even still, they're pushing it in a different direction of saying he's not going to defend us. Donald Trump is not going to defend us against Russia, especially with the election coming up. They're going to use whatever they can to hit Donald Trump with, and if there's a brick to associate Donald Trump with being feckless on the Russian issue, they would use it. My point is this. If Under this political climate in the United States, with the demonization of Russia as it is, with the political gimmick of attacking Trump, calling him weak on this idea of Russia and weak on this idea of defense, and saying that there's still something going on between Russia and Trump, despite not being able to find it under the Mueller report, that if anything happened with regards to some breach like that, he honestly believes that the United States wouldn't get involved. Trump would get involved almost by virtue of having no choice in the matter. Meaning, especially with the Trump presidency, he's not going to have agency any more than he had agency on issues of Syria. If you remember, Donald Trump in multiple cases, I'm taking the troops out of Syria, I'm taking the troops out of Syria. He said it on more than one occasion. And he seemed earnest about wanting to be more conciliatory on this issue and looking for opportunities. There was even talk, I guess you could say people leaking, saying that Donald Trump was bothered by having to be put in this condition over and over again of having to bomb Syria. He understood the danger involved in bombing a place that another country, combined with you and that country having 90% of the nuclear weapons, engaging in conflicts that close to the margins. So if Donald Trump didn't have the political fortitude to not do bombing when he didn't want to do bombing for something like Syria, what does it mean for something like NATO? NATO has been around for 50 years, if I'm not mistaken, 50, 60 years. And that pact, this kind of pact of steel of sorts, that if any of these countries is attacked, even tiny little, barely distinguishable Estonia, that all will get involved. And if you notice, Donald Trump had been browbeating these countries to increase their military budgets. Now, increasing the military budgets is somewhat self-serving because they were going to buy weapons, and those weapons are going to largely come from us. But still, in the climate that we have now, where Russians are being demonized and vilified in the United States, and if you were in the United States, you know what I'm talking about. And this demonization is aimed at Donald Trump, meaning it's used as a weapon. It's weaponizing racism in order to attack the Russians. And I know it's not racist, culturalism or whatever you want to call it, or xenophobia, but whatever. It's weaponizing this under this ridiculous notion that they somehow stopped Hillary Clinton from being on a throne as president and somehow helped Donald Trump get elected. This is the notion. This is the pretext for the vilification. This is the pretext for which they use to justify their hatred of Russians. Under this climate, where the opposition party, meaning the Democratic Party, is attacking Trump for being associated with Russia and being a Putin puppet, are we honestly to believe that with the opposition party howling at the moon at Donald Trump is weak on Russia, with the media howling at the moon that Donald Trump is weak on Russia, do you realize even in situations where the public itself agrees with Trump, meaning agrees with him on this notion of let's stop these wars, that Trump was still feckless in being able to push back on that, meaning military action was compelled. Agency was not necessarily involved in the process in regards to Donald Trump. Or at the very least, if an agency existed, he didn't exert it. He didn't exert it. I don't have this honest belief that if anything happened to Estonia, that Donald Trump will not get engaged, even if it's starting off minor. But military action has a tendency to push itself forward. But either way, the United States would get engaged. Jastrus can come on to the channel and have a conversation about this, but I massively disagree with him on this. Massively. I don't think Donald Trump is going to have a choice. Here's another one. When Donald Trump is asked about WikiLeaks that Julian Assange is captured, Donald Trump says, "What's WikiLeaks?" He's not saying what's WikiLeaks because he doesn't know what WikiLeaks is. He hasn't had a tumor or a stroke. He's not saying it because he's been so chastised with this thing between Trump and Russia that he doesn't want to touch that hot stove. He wants to leave it alone. What's WikiLeaks? I have no idea what WikiLeaks is. Mind you, during the campaign trail, screaming it multiple times. At this point, he's been so chastened by everything that has taken place. What's WikiLeaks? Whatever they want to say about him being an ogre and everything else, he is still subject to political winds, meaning media and the opposition party wrapping him in narratives, constraining his behavior, or in some degrees forcing behavior in order to legitimize himself or bolster himself against whatever narrative they're pushing on him. So I'll leave this here. This one wasn't meant to be long. I just thought this was interesting. Does the United States go to war with Estonia? I gave you my point of view. Give me yours at the bottom. Thanks all. If you guys enjoy the content, you find yourself coming back here often, please feel free to share, like, subscribe. You can always support the PayPal or Patreon. Thanks all.